I wasn't supposed to be home yet. Thursday afternoon traffic in the city was a mess, but I was lucky. I'd left work earlier than expected only because I'd done something dumb that morning. I'd forgotten my laptop on the kitchen counter. That never happens. I'm the guy who double-checks everything before leaving for work: keys, wallet, phone, badge, thermos. But today, I walked out the door without the one thing I actually needed. I guess that's what autopilot does to a man, especially when things at home don't feel quite right anymore. Carol had told me she was going away for the weekend. Some yoga retreat with coworkers out at a lakeside house about 2 hours north. No phones. No drama. Just peace and stretching, she said, half laughing, slinging her duffel bag over her shoulder. I didn't ask many questions. I'd gotten used to these little escapes of hers lately. Honestly, I was looking forward to a quiet weekend alone. No trying to decode her moods, no tension at dinner, no side glances at her phone lighting up when she thought I wasn't watching. But her car was still in the garage. That was the first crack in the picture she'd painted. I pulled in next to her and just stared at the steering wheel for a second, trying to rationalize it. Maybe they hadn't left yet. Maybe someone else was driving. Maybe she forgot something and came back. Or maybe she never planned to leave. IK** led the engine and stepped inside, trying to make as little noise as possible. I don't know why. Instinct maybe. Or dread. The house smelled like lavender and lemon. Clean. Too clean, actually. Like it had been freshly wiped down not long before I walked in. The kitchen counter was empty, not a mug or crumb in sight. Carol's yoga mat was still rolled up in the corner, untouched. I called out, "Carol?" No answer. Then, laughter. Not from the living room. Not from a speaker or the TV. This was upstairs. And it wasn't just her voice. There was someone else, low, male, confident. Too confident. My legs carried me up the stairs before my brain had fully caught up. And there it was. The bedroom was empty, but the bathroom door was shut. Behind it, muffled voices, water running, and what sounded like a light thud, followed by a quick shushing. Then more laughter. His. Then hers. My hand hovered near the doorknob, but I didn't touch it. I wasn't ready to open that particular door. A moment later, it opened on its own. A man stepped out, avoiding eye contact like his life depended on it. He was young, mid-30s, maybe. Toned. Casual gym clothes. A towel draped over his shoulder and not a hint of shame in his posture. Just silence. He brushed past me with a clipped, "Sorry, man," like I'd walked into his space. Behind him came Carol. She was wrapped in a slate blue robe, my robe, actually, the one I got for Christmas a few years ago. Her hair was damp, curling at the edges. She didn't flinch. She just met my eyes like I was a client who showed up early for a meeting. "Oh," she said, tone light but slightly breathless. "Jack, I didn't expect you." I lifted my keys. Forgot my laptop. She glanced toward the bed, toward the duffel bag that now sat zipped but untouched. "Ah, right?" I waited. No explanation came. After a few seconds, she pulled the robe tighter around her and cleared her throat. "That was James. He's a massage therapist. I cramped up after my run this morning, a hamstring locked up completely. I texted him to swing by. I didn't think you'd be home, otherwise I would've." She let the sentence trail off like an open-ended RSVP. I said nothing. Just stared. Not at her face, but at the wet footprints on the hardwood floor. At the towel hanging from the bathroom hook. At the faint smell of cologne I didn't recognize, herbs and spice, nothing like mine. "He's a professional," she added. But it was awkward. "I guess. We were talking about that just now." I nodded. Not because I believed her. Because I needed to hold onto something for one more minute. Just long enough to not explode in the hallway of our home. "Right?" "Awkward," I said, trying to match her tone. "You get massages in the bathroom now?" "I didn't want to get oil on the sheets," she replied smoothly. "It's easier with the tiled floor." "Got it." I smiled, but there was nothing warm behind it. Always thinking ahead. We stood there in silence. I didn't ask who James really was. She didn't offer any more details. Neither of us moved. Eventually, I walked past her, grabbed my laptop from the kitchen, and left. No slamming doors. No angry words. Just a quiet exit. But as I got into my car and sat there with the engine idling, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit for a long time. That wasn't the first lie. It was just the first one I caught with my own eyes. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me, the same one we'd installed together the first summer we moved into the house. Back then, everything we did felt like a shared adventure. Now, even the blade's lazy rotation felt like a taunt, constant, slow, and indifferent to my unraveling. Carol had texted me once around 9:42 p.m. Sorry if today was weird. Can we talk tomorrow? I didn't reply. I didn't have the energy to sift through what that message meant. Weird. That's what she called it. Like I'd accidentally walked into a surprise party and ruined the cake. Instead, I lay in the dark replaying the moment on the stairs over and over again. The towel. The silence. That man's scent still lingering on our walls. It was a scene I couldn't unsee. And the more I tried to reason it away, the more the pieces of the past began falling into place, pieces I'd conveniently ignored. It started with the haircut. That sounds dumb, I know. But Carol had always asked me what I thought before she made a change, texting me pictures from the salon, joking about approval. Then one Thursday, she came home with a completely different style. Shorter. Sharper. I told her she looked great, but something inside me ached. Not because I didn't like it, but because it wasn't for me. It was the first time I realized I wasn't the audience anymore. Then came the perfume. A new bottle. Stronger. Bolder. She'd spritz it on just before leaving for dinners with the girls or client drinks, and I noticed how she started showering right before leaving the house instead of after workouts. Once I leaned in to kiss her goodbye and she flinched, not dramatically, just enough that I remembered it. Her cheek barely brushed mine before she pulled away. I told myself she was distracted. I told myself a lot of things. The phone was next. Carol used to leave it everywhere. Kitchen counters, nightstands, sometimes the bathroom floor. It used to ding constantly with group chats and random memes. But now? Always face down. Always on silent. Once I heard it buzz twice while we were brushing our teeth and she calmly picked it up and turned it off. No glance. No urgency. Just management. I laughed at myself at the time. I'd heard guys on Reddit spiral over their wives changing phone habits, convinced it was the end. I didn't want to be one of them. I didn't want to be suspicious. But sometimes self-doubt masquerades as maturity. It wasn't just the phone. It was the sudden fatigue. The headaches. The last-minute plan changes. The way she started saying things like, "You wouldn't get it," or "Work's just different now." I asked once if she wanted to plan a weekend trip and she brushed it off with a shrug. I don't know. Can we just rest for once? So I stopped asking. But the signs didn't stop. One night about a month ago, I asked her casually about a guy named James. He had commented on her Instagram post something about missing that smile in Monday meetings. I remember how her jaw tensed before she replied. "He's harmless," she'd said a little too fast. "Just one of the newer guys. Very flirty. Everyone rolls their eyes at him." She laughed, but her eyes didn't join in. I wanted to believe her. I didn't press. Funny how hindsight turns passivity into guilt. Later that same week, she posted a photo from a rooftop bar I didn't recognize. She said it was a coworker's birthday. Her dress was tight, black, elegant. Not the kind she wore to work. She looked beautiful. I remember sitting at home eating takeout and feeling something gnaw at my chest. I told myself I was being insecure. That she deserved to go out and have fun. That was the worst part of it all. I let myself believe the story she gave me because it was easier than admitting I might be watching us fall apart. I got up from bed sometime around 3 a.m. and wandered the hallway. Her perfume still clung to her bathrobe hanging behind the door. I stared at it for a long time. It was that new scent again, warm, musky, something that didn't belong in yoga classes or lakeside retreats. It was meant for dim lighting and close proximity. A scent designed to linger on someone else's skin. Back in the living room, I pulled out the old photo albums we hadn't touched in years. Carol always hated them, said they were clutter. "Everything's digital now," she'd tell me, waving off the books like they were dusty relics. I flipped to our trip to Maine, the one we took 4 years ago when we were still laughing without effort. There was a picture of her sitting on a rock near the coast, hair whipped by wind, cheeks pink from the cold. She looked back at me with a smile so genuine it hurt to remember. I tried to compare that version of her to the one in the hallway hours earlier. They didn't match. Even the way she carried herself now was different. More calculated. Like every movement was part of some internal choreography I wasn't privy to. And the worst part? I couldn't tell if she even noticed the gap between who she was and who she'd become. Around dawn, I finally fell asleep on the couch, half covered by a throw blanket. The dream I had was fuzzy but haunting. I was chasing her down a hallway that kept stretching the closer I got. Every time I called her name, she walked faster, her back always turned. When I finally reached out to touch her shoulder, she turned around, and it wasn't her, just someone wearing her smile. I woke up sweating. By mid-morning, she was back. She walked in like nothing had happened, holding a bag of groceries. I sat at the dining table with a coffee I'd reheated twice. "Morning," she said. "No guilt. Just routine." "Didn't know you were heading out this early," I said. "I forgot almond milk," she replied, unloading the bag like we hadn't stood in silence the night before. "Figured I'd beat the rush." She moved efficiently, placing items in cabinets, humming a melody I didn't recognize. It felt like watching a stranger act out my wife's routine from memory. "I might go to the studio later," she added. "They've got a new instructor I want to try." I nodded, but my eyes stayed on her hands. Hands I used to hold under restaurant tables, in long car rides, during movie nights when we didn't even have to speak. Now they were just busy hands, occupied hands, maybe even borrowed hands. I didn't say anything else. I didn't accuse her. I didn't ask more questions. But that was the moment I knew I couldn't unknow what I already knew. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't burnout or emotional distance. This was a story being rewritten, and I wasn't part of the new draft. She walked past me to put the almond milk in the fridge and kissed the top of my head in passing. I flinched just slightly, enough for me to notice, maybe enough for her to notice too. But she didn't say a word. She never did. It's strange how certainty can feel like grief. Not shock, not rage. Just a quiet, heavy understanding that what you feared is no longer theoretical. It's real. And no matter how much you brace for it, you're never really ready. The Friday she mentioned the work dinner, I didn't say much. She brought it up in passing while folding laundry. "Oh, next Friday my firm's doing a dinner thing. Sort of an end-of-quarter mixer. Nothing big. Just boring speeches and cheap wine." She didn't look at me when she said it. Just kept folding a pair of leggings into a neat square. "Sounds thrilling," I said, trying to sound amused. She chuckled, light and airy. "Yeah, I'm not really in the mood for it, but, networking." I asked if spouses were invited. She shook her head quickly, too quickly. "Nah, it's mostly internal. HR's doing some awards and stuff. Honestly, I might just pop in and leave early." Something about the way she kept her eyes on the laundry, how her tone didn't quite match her words, made me go still inside. Not angry, not suspicious in a wild, accusatory way. Just quiet. The idea came to me slowly. I waited 5 days. Didn't ask any more questions about the dinner. Didn't bring it up again. But the night before, while she was asleep, I opened her laptop. She always used the guest account when she didn't want me to see browser history. But she slipped once, left it logged into her Gmail. I didn't dig deep, just searched one word, James. There it was. An email thread dated last week. "Looking forward to Friday. Same place. Of course. Already made the reservation. Private table like last time." My stomach dropped. The email had been archived. Like she meant to hide it but couldn't delete it. Maybe guilt had limits. Or maybe she didn't think I'd go looking. Maybe she was right. Until now. Friday came like any other day. She left the house in a black dress I'd never seen before. Not flashy, but elegant. Mature. Grown woman pretty, with heels that clicked confidently against the hardwood. "How do I look?" she asked, twirling slightly in the hallway mirror. "You look nice," I said. She smiled. "Wish me luck. I have to endure Todd's speech again. He thinks he's a stand-up comic." I nodded, kissed her cheek, and watched her walk out the door. 30 minutes later, I left too. I already knew the venue. I found it through her email. Not some hotel banquet or corporate space. Just a quiet, upscale restaurant tucked into the side of a vineyard estate outside the city. The kind of place with fire pits on the lawn and string lights in the trees. Romantic. Deliberate. I didn't go inside. I parked down the hill and walked along the gravel path by the hedges. There was a gap near the back lawn where the lights from the patio spilled into the trees. That's where I stood. And there she was, Carol, under soft lights, her laugh floating through the air like it belonged there. She was facing away from me at first, drink in hand, talking to someone I couldn't see. Then she turned, and so did he. James. I recognized him instantly. It was the same guy from the hallway. Towel over his shoulder, avoiding my eyes, muttering sorry like he just stepped out of the gym and not my life. But this time there was no exit. No hallway. No doubt. He was holding her waist as she leaned in, whispering something into his ear. She laughed. He tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. Her hand rested on his chest for a beat too long. It was soft. An asterisk mate. Practiced. They weren't hiding. They weren't just two coworkers sneaking away for drinks. They were a couple. Not having an affair in the salacious, tabloid sense, but in that deeper, more cruel way. The kind that forms in plain sight. One built slowly through glances and in-jokes and moments stolen during conference calls. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't passion. This was a routine. I pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I recorded exactly 1 minute and 27 seconds. No sound, just video. Her hands on his shoulders. His head tilting toward hers. The synchronized movement of two people completely comfortable in each other's orbit. She kissed his cheek. He smiled like it was a promise. And I watched like a man attending his own funeral. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or storm across the lawn. I didn't march over to the table and demand answers. What would that have done? Make her cry? Force a lie she'd already rehearsed? No. I needed her truth, not her performance. So I slipped away. On the drive home, the numbness was total. I barely remember the roads or the music playing or the way I gripped the wheel. I just remember pulling into the driveway and sitting there for a long time, staring at the porch light she always left on. She got home late? Maybe around 11:30. I heard her heels click down the hallway again, this time slower, like she didn't want to wake me. I lay in bed, eyes open, pretending to sleep. She paused at the bedroom door. I could feel her watching me, could practically hear her breath catch in her throat. Maybe she was wondering if I knew. Maybe she thought she'd gotten away with it. Either way, she didn't speak. Just slipped into the bathroom, changed quietly, and crawled into bed next to me like it was any other night. The sheets didn't smell like her usual perfume. They smelled like him. And I didn't say a word. Carol came home like nothing had happened. She moved around the house Saturday morning in that practiced way she'd perfected over the past year, neither rushed nor casual, just appropriate. Like she was acting in a silent film where everything had to be expressed in posture and glances. Not too warm. Not too cold. A middle ground of calculated normalcy. I sat at the kitchen table nursing coffee I didn't want, the bitter kind that stays in your throat long after the mug is empty. She walked in wearing leggings and a loose hoodie, hair tied up, no makeup, looking exactly like the version of her I used to wake up next to when things were still real. Morning, she said, pouring almond milk into her cereal like we were roommates in a sitcom that had long overstayed its welcome. Morning, I said back. Not cold. Not angry. Just nothing. She sat across from me, scrolling through her phone with one hand, spoon in the other. I studied her the way you'd watch a stranger in a waiting room, mild curiosity, distant confusion, no personal stake in the outcome. She didn't look up once. Not even to smile, or ask how I slept, or whether I wanted anything from the store later. Just small sounds. The clink of metal against ceramic. The occasional swipe of a screen. No apologies. No explanations. Not even an attempt. And that silence? It told me more than 1,000 confessions ever could. I didn't ask where she'd been last night. I didn't mention the vineyard. I didn't talk about James or how many seconds her fingers lingered on his arm. I didn't mention the video. I didn't show her the evidence. Why should I? She already knew what she'd done. She just didn't think I was brave enough to face it. She was wrong. After breakfast, I packed a small bag. Just the basics, a few shirts, socks, my laptop, a pair of running shoes I hadn't used in weeks. She was upstairs in the bathroom when I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of drama. I just walked out the front door and drove. I didn't go to a friend's place. I didn't stay in a hotel. I rented a short-term studio above a used bookstore 2 towns over. Tiny kitchen. Creaky floors. One window that looked out onto a narrow alley lined with fire escapes and rusted bikes. It was perfect. No framed wedding photos. No smell of her conditioner on the towels. No chore list's magnet to the fridge. Just quiet. And in that quiet, something surprising happened. I felt peace. Not happiness. Not relief. But a kind of neutral stillness I hadn't experienced in months. Maybe years. I took the next day off work. Called my manager and told him I needed a couple days. Didn't elaborate. He didn't ask. I think he could tell by my voice that it was serious, not urgent, not catastrophic. Just real. Carol didn't text that first day. Didn't call either. No questions. No check-ins. By Monday night, she sent one message. Where are you? Can we talk? I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her. Not because I was being petty. But because I knew she didn't want to talk. She wanted to manage. That's what people like her do when the illusion starts to crumble. They don't apologize. They don't confess. They try to renegotiate the narrative. Reposition the betrayal as a misunderstanding. Frame the lie as a moment of emotional confusion. But I didn't need a new story. I had already lived the old one. Instead of replying, I opened my laptop and began organizing everything. Photos, messages, bank transactions, screenshot *TS. That 1-minute 27-second video from the vineyard. I labeled it Friday_truth.mov. I created folders, then backups of the folders. One on a drive. One in the cloud. One on an encrypted USB. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. This wasn't about making her hurt. It was about making sure I never gaslit myself again. About preserving my sanity the way people preserve old letters to remind themselves the moments were real. In the evening, I walked down the block to a late-night coffee shop. Ordered a drip with oat milk. The barista, maybe 23, complimented my hoodie. I told her thanks. First compliment I'd heard in weeks. I sat at the window, sipping slowly, watching the traffic roll by. No one knew me here. No one knew her. I wasn't Jack and Carol anymore. I was just Jack. A man in a bookstore loft who used to believe in something that turned out to be a placeholder. The quiet that followed wasn't lonely. It was honest. It became a rhythm. Wake up. Run errands. Avoid social media. Breathe. For the first time, I noticed the absence of tension in my own body. The way I no longer braced myself every time my phone lit up. The way I could cook dinner without wondering if someone else had made her laugh that day. She texted again on Wednesday. I don't know what's happening. I thought we were okay. Please, can we talk? Still, I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because nothing I could say would matter if she couldn't admit it herself. The truth didn't need a script. It was already sitting on my hard drive. I'd almost forgotten about the cameras. They were a leftover decision from 2 years ago after someone broke into the garage and stole my tool chest. Back then, Carol said she didn't feel safe, so we added a couple of security cameras, one over the front door, one facing the driveway, and a discreet one in the living room that blended into the shelf near the books. A last-minute addition, really. Something to keep an eye on things when we were away. They weren't hidden. I told her about every install, showed her how the app worked, where the backups were stored. She wasn't interested. Too big brother, she'd said, waving me off. She must have forgotten too. Or maybe she thought I had. I hadn't logged into the system in months. The subscription renewed automatically and the cloud just kept storing footage in neat little 72-hour loops. Most of it was mundane, packages dropped off, squirrels darting across the porch, me mowing the lawn, her unloading groceries. But when I logged in the Monday after I left, I filtered for Saturday. The day after I'd walked out. I wasn't sure why I did it, maybe curiosity, maybe something more cynical, but I clicked through the thumbnails until I saw it. At 3:47 p.m., James walked back into my house. Not hesitantly. Not like someone sneaking around. He had a key. He used it. He was wearing a hoodie. Not his own. Mine. One I hadn't seen in months, the faded blue zip-up I used to wear on Sunday mornings. He let himself in, kicked off his shoes, and made his way to the kitchen like he belonged there. A few seconds later, Carol followed. She laughed at something he said. They clinked wine glasses. She always hated drinking in the afternoon. But there they were, sipping Cabernet in the kitchen I painted by hand. She made pasta. He leaned on the counter while she chopped onions and told a story I couldn't hear, but I could tell he'd heard it before. His reactions were perfectly timed. He touched her back lightly when he passed behind her. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. The whole thing played out like a short film. Well practiced. Clean. Not rushed. He lit the candles on the table, white ones in the silver holders we got as a wedding gift. They sat where she and I used to sit, in the same chairs, same placemats. They even used the linen napkins we'd received from her cousin at our engagement party. The ones she said were too nice for just us. Apparently, they weren't too nice anymore. They ate slowly, talked, laughed. They weren't afraid of being caught. That was the part that gutted me most. At one point, Carol got up and walked to the piano. We hadn't touched that thing in over a year. She always said it made her sad, too many childhood memories. But now? She sat down next to him, played a few notes, and sang something soft I couldn't identify. She wasn't good, not technically, but she was happy. Relaxed. Like she wasn't worried about being overheard. I watched her reach for his hand mid-song. That was when I paused the video. My thumb hovered over the trackpad for a long time. The room around me was still. The whir of the ceiling fan, the occasional creak from upstairs, none of it cut through the fog that pressed into my chest. This wasn't a fling. It wasn't stolen moments or secret motel rooms. It was domestic. They were living a version of our life, just without me. I clicked back into the footage. At 5:02, she said something clearly a joke, and he doubled over laughing. She grinned, proud of herself. I knew that smile. It was the same one she used to wear when she beat me at trivia or made the perfect omelet. It was her victory face. They stayed for another hour. They didn't sleep over. No physical affection beyond what you might call affectionate friendship, but there was no tension. No fear. No boundaries. This wasn't secretive. It was stable. At one point, he got up and grabbed something from the fridge like it was routine. Then Carol joined him at the sink. They stood shoulder to shoulder, rinsing dishes in comfortable silence. No words, just side glances and soft smiles. He kissed the top of her head before drying his hands. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him like she'd found the center of something. That's when she said it. The microphone didn't pick up everything, ambient noise garbled a lot, but the phrase was clear enough. It's like I can finally breathe. And he replied, barely audible, but unmistakably. I told you it'd be better. She nodded. And that was it. They didn't kiss. They didn't run upstairs. They didn't tear at each other with the desperation of an affair. They just coexisted. Like they'd been doing this every Saturday for months. Maybe they had. I exited the video and stared at the paused frame. James in my kitchen, Carol in a robe, both of them bathed in the golden light that used to mean Sunday morning waffles and dog-eared newspapers. I closed the laptop slowly, careful not to slam it. There was no rage. No violent fantasy of confrontation. Just a thudding finality. I wasn't being replaced. I'd already been replaced. I sat on the edge of the bed in the studio apartment, looking around at my own temporary world. A suitcase in the corner. A stack of takeout boxes on the table. A drying towel over the chair. No one waiting for me to come home. No shared calendar to sync. No inside jokes. And yet, for all its emptiness, this space had something my old house didn't. Honesty. This room wasn't lying to me. It wasn't pretending. It wasn't repurposing my memories. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch a wall. I opened the laptop again and downloaded the footage to a labeled folder. Camera_living room_03_18. I backed it up twice. Then once more on a private drive I didn't label. Just a small black thumbstick that I kept in my pocket the next day when I met with the lawyer. I didn't tell him much, just that I had documentation. When I handed him the drive, he raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to go this route? I nodded once. Yeah, I'm sure. He didn't ask anything else. And for the first time in weeks, someone didn't offer me a script to follow. He just said, all right, let's start with clean separation.